Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is part 2 of my very important special interview with Nightstalker Daniel Johnston. Now, DJ, we were just touching on Halloween Hell 2010, but I want to dig up a little bit of dirt. I want to get some controversy going in this interview.
Controversy creates cash.
There was some problems that day. Obviously, Johnny V wasn't able to be there. So we had to figure out another plan in order to get to, the completion of that show.
Somebody had to wrestle me in order to make it 5-on-5.
Yes, correctly.
Or else the whole thing would have gone to shit.
Yes, well said. And Chris's suggestion was Bundaberg.
Right,
and
so you're going to have to actually take me into a bit of depth on that because I wasn't really privy to this conversation.
Really? Well, we had a conversation and Chris didn't want me to do double duty.
Right, I can understand that though, but it was... How could... He wanted Bundaberg to wrestle me, you're saying?
On behalf of XCW, and I was like, he was in XCW, you can't do it. And I contacted Blade that day to see if he could fill in for John, he couldn't make it. I tried Chris Rowe, he couldn't do it. I tried a bunch of people, but we couldn't find anyone. So we had to go with that option, but Chris wanted Bundaberg to represent XCW, and I was like, that would just ruin everything.
That does not make sense as part of the series.
But also, not only that, DJ, but there was a problem with the result of the 5 versus 5 series.
Right, in that Chris wanted ICWS to win the series.
Yes, and I completely understand why he would.
And you thought that didn't really make sense because you guys had the experience edge. And
no, that wasn't it. It was more. It was more the case of how the other XCW guys felt, and I know that we had the upper hand of that feud for most of the goings on, so I understand that Chris thought maybe it was the right thing for us to do. But
put over the young guys since you guys weren't really active anymore by that point.
Yeah, but
light up your cigarette.
But one of the problems, DJ, was Mike, Nick Ariel, Diffuser. They didn't want us to lose to people so much younger than us.
Right, because it was about 5 or 6
if
years
it was
difference
today,
at the least.
If it was today, with you guys being as old as you are now, then I think it would be a different story and they would have been more open to losing. Because they don't usually have a problem losing. Mike's lost to everyone. Diffuser's lost a whole heap of matches. But I think it was just because at the time you guys were still quite young and we...
See, I think now that I'm kind of 22... like the sort of age that you guys were at that point, I can sort of see it's kind of like having, asking like me, Dan, Nick, and MC Cruel to like lose to the team of sort of Circus and AAA.
Yeah, nothing against
such
them.
An age gap.
Nothing against them. It's just the age gap, and the experience. You guys have been around for a long time in comparison to those guys.
So I think it was actually me and Eli that eventually came up with the compromise for the draw finish,
double count,
which we felt would be even cooler because of the magnitude of the event, and now we're not even going to have a clear-cut victor out of it.
I mean, I just thought as well it would be cool to have a draw. We could shake hands afterward and that's it. That's the end of the... because you can't really have someone walk away as a loser in that. We're all winners, really. It was a great show. So after this, I believe, DJ, you slowly transitioned into managing.
Right. That was... because I couldn't wrestle at that point because of my commitment to Schwa. And at that point, I didn't really have the nuts to say, well, fuck it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway. So... And nor should I. If you're going to commit to training as a professional, you can't be going and getting injured if you're then going to be expected to perform on one of their shows. And you got to remember as well, just quickly, the landscape of pro wrestling at that time was different. It's not like Schwa could have called in someone from APW, for example. Yeah. So they needed...
They needed everyone that was a trainee.
They needed their people there because Schwa was hanging by a thread for a very long time. So I understood that. So I started managing JD Flame because I talked with Chris and I talked with JD himself, and I thought, well, I saw a lot of JD Flame, especially character-wise, in myself, and I thought, well, now I don't have to wrestle, I can just accentuate my strengths and do the managing thing. And I think we, in his feud with Mike Delcanho that was happening at that time, we cut like quite a few good little promos, and I think it really helped Justin become a bit more integrated into the social circle as well.
And this seems to be a running constant theme in your backyard wrestling life. JD Flame, Knuckles, Steel Kemsley. The association with you is elevating these guys to another level.
And beyond that, it's also elevating me in a way as well, because it's kind of pushed me up into this elder statesman position within the backyard wrestling scene, where it's now I'm able to use the things that I'm good at to help somebody else become an even better wrestler than I could ever have been at that point in my career, or I say career, in my evolution as a backyard wrestler. So I was really, I really enjoyed all the stuff with JD Flame, and at that time,
you guys just bounced off each other so well, especially that promo where you're trying to convince Chris Zeppelin to not let it be a hardcore match.
I remember that day. Each of those promos took several takes because JD just kept on cracking up laughing. He couldn't.
It would have been difficult.
He just couldn't keep it together.
Yeah.
I remember we cut this other one. I'll just say quickly, where we're both sitting. He had this nice house, because he's Jewish, and he had this quite wealthy looking house. So we're sitting in this nice house with a marble balcony on like a nice leather couch, and we're kind of sitting there, and the camera rolls, and the first thing I say was like, we've broken Mike Delcanho's wrist. And I remember like JD just like had the serious look on his face, like a tough look, and just sort of looked straight at me and burst out laughing, like.
I will put this promo up in a link on the on this podcast. It's hilarious. You got to watch it.
And another one while you're at it is include the Nick's 2 cents episode, where me and you went back and forth.
And we will get to that soon. That's
right,
going to be one of my favourite parts of this interview, I think.
Right, so anyways, I don't really know if JD actually needed me to be his mouthpiece, but I think that he did learn a lot from me, and definitely from a social point of view, came out of his shell a lot more, so I was able to bond with Mike Delcanho and JD a lot more. Mike's another one of those guys that's now become a really close friend of mine, so yeah, all in all, that was a good experience as well.
Okay, so I mean, this team with you and JD Flame, you're managing, you're not doing the wrestling as much. I think every now and then you might have there as Obi.
I mean, I had to, the Obi stuff, as long as I was wearing a mask, or, I could do the managing thing because I wrestled in a mask at the time on the pro circuit. So, that was how I was able to circumvent that and do the managing thing. And I would occasionally do a little something as Obi. I did the match against you at the Halloween Hell, which I believe was my first match back. But I think at that point I already decided to leave Schwa for stress reasons anyway.
And it was so, kind of becoming a constant theme as well, was you were retiring then coming back.
Well, it was just one of those things where in my mind I just couldn't let go of the idea of being a pro at the time, but also there was that other side that I've now fully embraced, where it's sort of like it's never going to be the right fit, because the people on the pro scene, besides like Jared Slate, he gets me, but I think as a general rule, in large part, the pro guys don't really get kind of that. I know my own style and what works to entertain people, and I know that I could be a useful part of their shows, but they couldn't see past, Do
you think that they're worried that you performing with your disability?
It was a concern about me getting injured.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff that I was doing, say in training matches, people would just go crazy for. People would say it's a lot similar to the reaction that I would get now after a match, where people would go, man, that was so entertaining. I would actually... I remember more recently as well, the last time I was back there, I actually had to instruct people to cut promos because I was on a high level with promo cutting.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an issue of whether or not it could be entertaining or whether I could be a valuable part of the show, but Slate, as my friend, didn't want it on his conscience that I might go and get dropped on my head or get injured, you know, fall over or something like that. It was just too risky. But I do think that beyond him, there was also this kind of, well, I say beyond him, but there was a core group of people that have always believed in me, like the Wraith and Slade, and Klaus and Mike Massive and things like that. But I do think that beyond that, within the other promotions, even within Schwa itself, there were and still are people that never felt that I belonged there, and I think that they... And I guess rightfully so, it's just some people have that school of thought with wrestling, that I didn't really warrant the privilege of being on their cards.
Does it affect you? Does it upset you that it never got down?
It did upset me for a long time, but once WZWA really took off and started becoming a product that was, quite frankly, on par with a lot of the professional shows that you see around there, and I'm not saying that it's always on par or anything like that, there's a lot of things we could tighten up on, but once I started realizing that WZWA has its own following and it's actually popular with several people that are in the pro scene, and it's got such a wide audience, so many more people watch it on YouTube than will go and watch an AAW recap, for example. I realised that I don't really need to be a professional to feel fulfilled by what I'm doing with wrestling. And that's not a knock on the pro scene at all. I love a lot of the people there. They're good friends of mine. I have friends that wrestle there now, and I'm rooting for them, and I want everyone there to be successful and thrive, and the pro scene overall, I want everyone to thrive. But for me, I also think that WZWA should be allowed its chance to thrive as well. And we should embrace any kind of positive reception and fan base that we can get. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying and embracing that success. Even if backyard wrestling is kind of a taboo thing in the eyes of a lot of people in the wrestling scene.
Well, I think a lot of people just need to realise, it's always just going to be there, and you can ignore it all you want, and that's cool. If that's what you want to do, then that's fine. But we're always going to be here, and I think we're always going to be challenging them to be better. Because I've been a part of 2 of those federations now, and I still feel that on WZWA's best day, we're right on par, if not better than at least 3 out of the 4.
Definitely. And I used to have a hard time kind of accepting that because I felt that it was disrespectful, but if any of the pro people are listening to this, it's not that we're being disrespectful in this attitude, it's just that we're proud of this thing that we've created, and we should be proud of it, and we enjoy the friends and the lifetime memories that we've got from it, and I'm not going to shy away from it. When I tell people about my wrestling, I actually just tell them that I'm a wrestler now, because your layman, your average person, doesn't really know the distinction. If they come to watch us at a WZWA show, they'll see the ring, they'll see the entrance, they'll see that we're wearing tights. Wrestling.
It's wrestling. Just happens to be in the backyard.
And if it's a good match, it's a good match. And I've never had anyone, either who's a fan or not a fan of wrestling, come back and say that they thought that WCWA was shit, or how can you think that this is okay because it's not like WWE or whatever, So I think that the main people that have such a problem with backyard wrestling are wrestlers themselves, and that fans of wrestling, whether it be people like Tez or whether it be strangers or anything like that, fans of wrestling want to watch wrestling. They don't care where it comes from as long as people aren't being fuckwits. And I think yourself and myself and several others, if we see something happen in WZWA or ICWS that we think is too far or too idiotic, we speak up about it. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we're sitting there saying it's okay to go and neck bump off a ladder or fucking take a fucking pile driver onto a flaming pile of light tubes or something. It's not that we're cool with that. It's just saying this thing that we do builds people's confidence. It brings them out of their shells. It's no different from saying, alright, a bunch of friends are going to get together and put on a backyard production of Streetcar Named Desire. It's no different from a group of friends getting together and getting a camera and shooting a short film. It's no different than if you played a game of like backyard cricket and decided you wanted to film that and put that on YouTube. Yeah. So that's where I stand on that, and I mean no disrespect in that statement. And if you take it in a disrespectful way, then that's on you, quite frankly. Anyone who takes it in a disrespectful way and thinks that it's the wrong way for us to talk about it is just obviously too insecure and small-minded to see the bigger picture, because what we do doesn't affect negatively any of the pro feds. You know, it's not like Perth Now is going to like pick up the story and go, look at these kids that have gone and copied what they've seen on TV and now we should ban wrestling in WA. It's just not going to happen, because on a large part, people don't give a shit about wrestling. It's just fake. They see it as a performance art. You know? So they don't see it as a sport any longer, and I think that even though I don't consider myself on the same level as the pros, and mad respect to them for what they do and going to training and exercising and, you know, performing in front of a crowd, but I'm proud of my accomplishments that I've made there. Sorry if I've been waffling on with that for a bit long. But that needed to be said. Really. It
needed to be said, and it finally has been said. Okay, so you run with JD Flames over, and now you're kind of starting to get back into wrestling more frequently.
And it was starting to get a lot more fun by that point. Starting with the match that I had against you.
2011, I believe it was.
At Halloween Hell 2010, and then by 2011... I'd started to get more into the wrestling side of it, which was good. So,
and I think ICWS had one more real solid year from late 2011 to late 2012. But let's talk about Nick's 2 cents. The segment between you and I, which has always had such rave reviews over the years. Everyone really loved it.
And it is one of my favourite.
I love watching it too, because we really gave it to each other.
Because you can tell what we're thinking in our heads too. How we didn't start laughing, you know, while we were out there. Because I could see the little smile on your face as well while we were doing it. It was so funny. Like, I'm standing there, no shoes, looking like a dirty feral, wearing my Seinfeld t-shirt. We're just so funny, and then Nick, of course, just played his part so
just
well.
Playing like the
casual, just staring shit, like, you know. Someone in the crowd boos fucking Tim. Oh yeah, he's a little faggot, eh? Like, just plays to the crowd, and everyone starts cheering Nick, like. So a bit of backstory behind that. The previous month, I'd had the big payoff match to my feud with JD Flame, and pardon me, that match had just not gone well at all. Period. It was just a case
why do you think it was?
Well, at the time, JD Flame was going through some problems with a lot of people in ICWS. He was developing as a person into a young adult, and I think that was kind of causing a lot of friction with the way that he ended up talking to people and stuff. And he didn't really seem interested in the match. And I don't fault him. I love JD now. Like,
he's a completely different person.
I hope to wrestle him again in the future in WZWA. It just didn't coagulate. The stuff that we hit was good. It was crisp. But as an overall match, it just didn't click. Yeah. You know, it didn't have.
I remember watching it feeling frustrated because I knew you both.
Yeah, you're gonna have to just edit that out.
I knew you both could have done a hell of a lot better. So I remember watching it, feeling quite frustrated. Like, this is the payoff to their feud, and it's a disaster. I thought it was a disaster.
It was one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life. I mean, I remember this cute girl that we knew from school, that me and Knuckles knew from school, Natasha. She was there.
Oh, she's hot.
Yeah, and she was, and her and her brother were really gracious about it. They enjoyed the show. They gave us kind words because they're good people. But I still was like,
the cute girl
got strangers watching, and
the cute girl saw me have a shit match.
Yeah, I didn't perform
now
that
from
well.
now on,
you know?
she won't come back. She'll always think, DJ, I like the wrestler, but he's shit.
Fuck that. So, and I think then we decided to work that into the actual promo, and so that's where the fire for Nick's 2 cents came from, because I decided to shoot on the fact that you had recently departed with the Southern Hemisphere Wrestling Alliance. And, I think the fact that we worked all that real life stuff into it and then put it under this veil of animosity, because of course we're great friends.
Yeah, like
we've never had a falling out or anything like that.
There was like no animosity at all.
But it was just, we used some fuel that was going on in our respective wrestling lives.
Yeah.
To kind of make magic happen, and it was still to this day one of my proudest promos. And then after that promo, I think got us both fired up as fuck.
Well, see, I think at that point I've been back in the ICWS for a few months, but nothing, because I was just having matches, really climbing the ladder, as they say. And that finally, when you struck a call with me, finally I had some passion with something really. I actually had something to say, so I really, went off on my promo on you, and but I hadn't really said too much that was too interesting since I'd been back, so that really lit a fire under my eyes.
Then
the ensuing match later on.
So then awesome. Going into the match, we were both just so pumped.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know about you, but I was just so excited.
It's one of those. It was those rare times in backyard wrestling where you've built it up so much with everyone, seeing this great promo. When that match first started, everyone was hot. The crowd
because
was
of the
hot.
way that we planned out the beginning of that match too, to just get it off with a bang. And I remember that was just so physical, and I took my first bump on the outside, the sidewalk slam. And it looked gnarly because one of my arms came down before the rest of my body, and I was so excited that I took a bump on the outside. And the match was so physical. I'm like chopping you in your back, and you've got sunburn and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Just heavy shit. And I mean, everyone just gave us a rave review. We got match of the day.
Yeah, and you got thrown around, man.
Oh,
I don't think
and
it
was so exciting.
Like
it was so exciting to be thrown around. See, nowadays I get thrown around a lot more because my mobility and stuff has improved with time. But back then it was just so good to actually feel comfortable and get thrown around and actually carry my end of the bargain.
You see the
selling wise,
the missile drop kick I gave you.
Oh,
and
so
you went
physical,
flying.
so physical. Took a classic Daniel Johnston bump, and people still to this day claim that it's one of their favourites as a fan. So definitely, I'd love to have a match again in WZWA.
It will happen,
or
sometime.
several matches.
I just got to line it up at some point. I got to try and fit it in somewhere along the line. It will happen. But I mean, I haven't wrestled Chaos in like 4 years.
And it only seems like yesterday as well, because that was like at the tail end of ICWS.
Yeah, and I just haven't been able to line it up yet. But anyway, moving forward, so the JD Flame thing's over. You're just a singles wrestler for a little while.
Started to get back into the flow of it a bit.
Yep, and then Knuckles comes along.
Right, Knuckles.
Nemanja.
I spear you. You'll die. And just for you, Nam, in case you're listening, because I know you'll listen, Idi Magaras. Yeah, fuck you cunt. Nah. But Knuckles had that, didn't really understand the mechanics of wrestling because he's a martial artist that's what he does. And so I came back to cut promos for him because he wasn't comfortable cutting promos. So I was wrestling and teaming with him at the same time and managing him. And he comes back, and we give him instructions of, okay, do this, 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 and this in your match, and then go, that's it. And he does the instructions perfectly, and just all of a sudden we have a new star. This guy that's wrestled from the beginning, but now all of a sudden he's like this Brock Lesnar, or no, Rusev style beast who's just dropping people with kicks. And
I think Nemanja will admit himself, he's not the most athletic guy, but if you work with him and you come up with a solid plan, you will have a good match.
Dropping people with kicks, ripping people's shoulders out of their sockets. He just became just this animal in the ring. And then eventually, I didn't even have to tell nothing to him at the beginning. He just learnt to loosen up his body and go with the flow of it. Yeah. And he learnt how to wrestle himself. And the match he had with you, the match he had with Clint Marshall, his first main event in years for the title. The match with Dark Ice.
That was one of the top matches of the show.
Oh, fuck yes.
Those two went all. I was so impressed.
And he just absolutely, you can, if you go and watch the recaps sequentially from when he returned against Daniel Lowe to when he had that final match against me at Twisted Metal 7, you can see how his body eventually loosens up and adjusts to wrestling as a.
It's like he finally got it. It's like, remember
clicked
Mark
with
Henry?
him. It's like he's like the Mark Henry.
Mark Henry used to suck.
And now, after all of these years, he's just a badass.
It took a while, but he finally got there, and that's where.
And now he's like, I can't imagine, Knuckles really worked hard and earned all the respect that he has now. He already was respected because he's a great guy and he just commands respect with his personality, but then once he started having those matches, I mean, it was a phenomenon. People were coming to shows to watch Nem's match, to see what he would do. Because it was one of those things where you legitimately didn't know if this guy was going to get pissed off and just boot the guy in the face. If the guy accidentally hit him with a stiff shot. So people were watching to see what would he do against the powerhouse like Clint Marshall. Fantastic match, like submission-based.
Yeah.
Built up really gradually. What would he do against Mike Delcanho, the high-flying technical guy? Fantastic,
Yeah.
Just in its own way.
Then he'd have a match with Jack Wallace and it was not very good at all.
But it was still possible. He'd gotten to the point where you were confident that the match wouldn't be garbage, if it was against someone that couldn't. And that wasn't either of their fault because neither of them at the time especially were the kind of people that could lead matches.
Yeah.
You usually need one person to lead. But they did an admirable job, so I'm not going to fault it. But that was still good, and I'd consider that at the bottom of the list for that era of Knuckles. So that's saying something about how good he really did get.
So we're getting to this era of the ICWS. We're about to wrap up the ICWS thing.
Getting on to WZWA.
We're getting close. We're not quite there yet, but the next era of ICWS is quite an interesting era as far as I can see. You're back. Knuckles is back. We've got SPWS there.
Justice.
We got Dan
Lowrider
and some of the originals still there. But then you got Tim Justice, Lowrider. Clint Marshall's been there a little while.
Jack Wallace.
You got some of the WZWA guys coming in.
Because they just kind of started coming into their own.
Right in the tail end of ICWS.
And they were really. Now it's to the point where when ICWS does have a rare show, the show is awesome.
Yeah.
Because now you've got all those elements from the old and the new.
But do you kind of, when you have an ICWS show, I know some of the originals might have felt this way. It was almost like the ICWS was slowly no longer the ICWS because the only originals that were there were you, Knuckles, Dan Zeppelin.
I don't think that...
Did you ever feel?
I think that at first we kind of had that sort of feeling, but now the way we look at it is that WZWA is ICWS in a way. It is the natural, like I said at the beginning of part 1, it is the convergence of ICWS and XCW. Those two branches come together as one, and we elevated the fed that those guys started into. Now it's an amalgamation of all three.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're all such a close social group, because it is really, even though on paper there are certain people that founded each Fed, I think WZWA is all of our Fed. It is the way it is because of how all of us contribute to it.
Yeah.
So at first there was a feeling of like, oh, well, I guess ICWS doesn't matter anymore. I was afraid this was happening. But now it's sort of like, we are still doing ICWS. We are still doing XCW because it's living on in the people and the matches that we're doing in WZWA.
Yeah.
And it's a combined effort of all of those different booking philosophies and wrestling styles that are creating what a WZWA show is. It's got the production values of ICWS. It's got the entertainment value of XCW. It's got the technical aspect of like ICWS, which is what WZWA already brought to the table originally. It's got all of that. It's got the big show atmosphere that the shows in the eastern states had. It's got the crowd reactions that the original ICWS in its heyday or the XCW nighttime shows had. So many different elements from those two feds and from the original WZWA that now create the product that we wrestle for today. So I definitely have no hard feelings. I think that we all have a big stake in WZWA.
For sure. And I mean, we will end this in just a few minutes. I just wanted to end the part about the ICWS, about your struggles with Chris Zeppelin and his waning interest in the ICWS. How you felt about it, how you feel that maybe the ICWS still hasn't had the send-off that it deserves. You know, the only originals that will be left are you and Dan Zeppelin. You know, what does the future hold in store for ICWS? How do you feel about the Chris Zeppelin situation and just
well,
shoot
I don't want to say definitively whether or not ICWS will make that return that we've talked about, because at this point you just don't know. It's that simple. You just don't know. I do want to say that there will probably be at least one more ICWS show in the future. Possibly more. We've still got the base. It's still in as good a condition as it's ever been because Rob Zeppelin's always working on it and stuff, so can now be transported around. But I would say 2015 is the year to keep your eyes peeled for some ICWS, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think I can say with confidence that we'll do at least one more to give it that proper bookend. And then after that, ICWS will basically become amalgamated with WZWA. I mean, that process has already been under the way for quite some time, and I think that'll just complete it. With regards to Chris Zeppelin, I think, regrettably, like, we're good friends now again, but for a while our friendship kind of waned, because so much of our friendship was based on wrestling and the ICWS. So it bothered me that he seemed to be losing interest in it, while at the same time refusing to budge to my ideas. Or even if Dan agreed with the idea, he'd refuse to budge to that idea because it wouldn't make sense to him. And I'd be like, well, hang on, dude, you're basically over it at this point anyway, you know?
What's it to you?
So I did have a problem in that respect. Him growing out of it, that's his choice, that's what people do. That's life, you know? I think he'll always have a special place in his heart for ICWS. I think that we can expect him to make his way down to the occasional event here and there. You know, last time ICWS did do a show, he still enjoyed it a lot and filmed all the matches and really liked it. It was just like the Chris of old. I just think that it's a case of he's working now, he's got a girlfriend, he's living life. And I think that he's always going to still enjoy it in small doses and hold a soft spot for it. So that's all good there. Will ICWS have its final chapter? I don't know, though. I don't know if there's a return full time on the horizon, or like a once or twice a year thing, or just the one event. But I do know that it's not completely finished yet.
Well, I hope not. And this is my dream, DJ. My dream would be one final ICWS show where we give it that send-off that it deserves. And we make a great DVD out of it, like the final XCW show in 2010, where you have,
Yeah. And it doesn't
moments where we look back and appreciate people like Blaze, people like Big Mac, or anyone and everyone that had come and gone over the years, MC Cruel, Wicked Nick James, all of them. Try and get back a few people to at least be at the final show, like Knuckles. Get all of those guys, to come along, and this is the last time we're doing it. Come and watch, and give it the send-off that it deserves.
Well, I'll lay it out to just finish off this part. I'll see if we can gauge interest in a final show or a return for ICWS. Here's how I would want to do it. Z Arena, evening/night show. Not giving a fuck what the gay cunt neighbours next door think, because we haven't even touched on that. We might have to bring that up when we talk about Rusty, or if we talk about him.
We will.
I would do a show where Dan and I will book the whole card in conjunction with Carl. We will sort out with liaison with Chris and stuff how to pay tribute to those people of the past. We'll bring back the old guys probably for like a gimmick type of match, some sort of gimmick thing or segment, We'll have a Q&A, we'll have a couple of promo segments, and just generally book people against opponents that we know they're gonna feel that they can steal the show with, so we can make this the best event we've ever had. That's the way that I would approach it. And just nothing too fancy, just a good solid show, decent length. We'll make it so that it's going to be the last one, so we don't have to worry about time constraints. There's no, we have to rush off by 4.
Yeah.
We'll give ourselves the time, we'll give ourselves the space, and we'll just take our time with it and just enjoy it. And if we have to move the base to a different venue for it, then so be it. But we'll do it properly, and we'll do it the right way. And I think I would like to know what people think of that idea. Get the WZWA and the XCW and some old ICWS people all in there, and just making it a celebration of backyard wrestling in WA. So, if not that, then a full-blown return would be good, but that's how I would do the final show.
If it were to happen.
If anyone's interested in it.
Yep.
So, putting it out there now. If anyone's interested in it, now's the time to speak up. I want to know, actually. I want to know on the threads and stuff. You can just tag me in the post what you would do if we were going to have a final show. What would you do? That's the interactive question of the day. What would you do to make a final show really memorable and special?
Sounds good, and that will be the end of part 2. Part 3 is coming up. We're going to talk about WZWA. We're going to talk about
lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff. We got a Q&A.
Maybe the best part.
Maybe the best part. We're going to pour ourselves a stiff drink, and we're going to come back.
We're going to get a little stiff.
Yeah, we're going to get a little stiff, and not in the wrestling sense. I mean
our penises.
With our dicks.
Like, the pre-cum's already wetting my jocks.
Yeah, me too.
So,
so anyway, we will be back with part 3 in just a few moments.
R.I.P. Winston and Fury.